The year is 1914. Europe stands on the edge of war, but in London, another kind of departure is underway. A small ship, just 44 meters long, prepares to sail south. Its name is Endurance. Its goal, to cross the Antarctic continent for the first time in history. 28 men are about to disappear into the ice. The man leading them is Ernest Shackleton. He had already tried to reach the South Pole once. He failed, but failure, for Shackleton, was just another reason to try again. He placed an ad in the newspaper. Men wanted for hazardous journey. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness. Constant danger. Safe return doubtful. 28 men answered the call. Sailors, scientists, a carpenter, a cook, a photographer, and a stowaway, a young man who hid in a locker for 3 days before anyone found him. Shackleton let him stay. He would need every pair of hands. None of them knew what they were walking into. The ship sailed south. First stop, Buenos Aires. Then South Georgia, the last outpost of civilization. Beyond that, only ice. The crew sang songs, played football on deck, celebrated Christmas in the middle of summer. The mood was high, but Shackleton knew what waited ahead. He had seen it before, the frozen horizon that swallows men. On December 5, 1914, Endurance left South Georgia. The last letter was mailed, the last photograph taken. The ship disappeared into a gray horizon of mist and ice. No one would hear from them again for nearly 2 years. Behind them, the world was at war. Ahead, only silence. What happened next would become one of the greatest survival stories in human history. But in December 1914, no one knew that. The crew still believed they would cross Antarctica. They still believed they would come home as heroes. The ice was waiting, and it was patient. On December 5, 1914, Endurance left South Georgia and sailed into the Weddell Sea. The crew was confident. They had a ship, a plan, and a leader who had survived Antarctica before. But this time, the ice was different. The Weddell Sea that year held more pack ice than anyone had ever recorded. They were sailing into a trap. For weeks, they pushed south. The ice grew thicker. The ship slowed. Sometimes they made only a few miles a day. But Shackleton was determined. He wanted to reach the continent, to launch the crossing. He didn't know that the ice was already planning something else. On January 18, 1915, it made its move. That night, the temperature dropped. The ice around the ship solidified. By morning, Endurance was trapped, frozen in place at 7,634s. The crew tried everything. They used saws, picks, even explosives. The ice wouldn't budge. Shackleton made a decision. They would wait. Wait for the thaw. Wait for spring. They didn't know how long that would be. The ship became their home. They played football on the ice, held dog races, celebrated birthdays. The photographer Frank Hurley captured it all. Men laughing, smoking, living. It looked like an adventure, but beneath their feet, the ice was moving. Slowly, silently, it was carrying them north, away from their goal, into the unknown. By February, the sun disappeared. Winter had come. Temperatures dropped to -30. The crew moved into the ship, huddled together, waiting. They could hear the ice pressing against the hull, groaning, cracking, the sound of something alive, something hungry. They didn't know it yet, but the ice was testing them, testing how much they could endure. For 10 months, they drifted. 10 months of darkness, cold, and waiting. The ice held them, but it was changing. The pressure was building. Soon, the ship would have to fight. And Shackleton knew In a fight between wood and ice, wood always loses. But the men? The men might still survive, if he led them right. By late October 1915, the pressure was no longer a threat. It was a weapon. The ice didn't just squeeze, it attacked. Beams buckled, planks split. Water poured into the hold faster than the pumps could clear it. The men worked day and night, but they knew the ship was dying. The only question was when. On October 24, 1915, the pressure became unbearable. The hull began to crack. Water poured in. Shackleton gave the order, abandon ship. For 2 days, the men hauled supplies onto the ice. They watched their home die. On November 21st, with a single cry of, "She's going, boys," Endurance slipped beneath the ice. "28 men stood on a drifting ice floe in the middle of the Weddell Sea. No ship, no rescue, no hope, except the one they carried in their own hands. They set up camp. They called it Patience Camp. They would need every ounce of it. The ice was their home now, and it was melting. For 5 months, they drifted, eating penguins, seals, anything that moved. Their dogs, their companions, were shot and eaten one by one. The men grew thinner, weaker, but Shackleton held them together. He knew if they lost hope, they lost everything. And hope was running out.
Just barely.
On April 9, 1916, the ice floe split in two. The camp was destroyed. The men scrambled into 3 small lifeboats, the James Caird, the Dudley Docker, the Stancomb Wills. They pushed off into the open ocean. Around them, killer whales circled. Ahead, 100 miles of freezing water. And then, nothing. For 7 days they sailed. No sleep, no fresh water. Just the waves and the cold. On April 15, 1916, a cry went up. Land. It was Elephant Island, a rocky, windswept, uninhabited scrap of land. They stumbled ashore. For the first time in 497 days, they stood on solid ground. But they were still lost. 22 men remained on Elephant Island. They had no ship, no radio, no hope, except the one man who had promised to return. They built a shelter from 2 overturned boats, covered it with canvas. They called it the Snuggery. Inside, it was dark, damp, and freezing. They waited and waited. Meanwhile, Shackleton and 5 others were crossing 1,300 kilometers of the world's most dangerous ocean in a 6.8-meter lifeboat named James Caird. For 16 days, waves crashed over them. Their clothes froze. Their water ran out. They sailed by instinct, by luck, by sheer will. On May 10, 1916, they saw land, South Georgia, but they were on the wrong side. The boat was too damaged to sail around. They had to cross the island on foot. No map, no gear, just a rope, and adze, and 36 hours of impossible courage. Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean climbed mountains no one had climbed before. They slid down glaciers without knowing what lay below. On May 20th, 1916, they heard a sound they hadn't heard in 17 months, a steam whistle. They stumbled into the Stromness whaling station, filthy, bearded, half dead. The manager stared at them and asked, "Who the hell are you?" Shackleton straightened up and said, "My name is Shackleton." For the first time in 17 months, they were safe. But their work wasn't done. 22 men were still waiting on Elephant Island, and Shackleton was coming for them. 3 times Shackleton tried to reach Elephant Island. 3 times the ice turned him back. On August 30th, 1916, a small Chilean tug called Yelcho finally broke through. A figure on the beach waved. It was Frank Wild, second in command. Shackleton shouted across the water, "Are you all well?" Wild shouted back, "We are all well, boss." All 28 men survived. Not one was lost. They didn't cross Antarctica. They failed at everything, except survival. Against ice, cold, hunger, and despair, they refused to die. Today, someone stands on the same beach where those 22 men waited. The same wind blows. The same waves crash. And the same question lingers. What makes a person keep going when all hope is gone?